This is a story about a girl named Julia. Every morning she went to work by bus, and life was pretty rough for her. The bus left from the station. It was lucky for Julia to find a good place to stand, as it was during rush hour that the bus was crowded. Actually, it was always crowded, and people always bumped into each other whenever there was an acceleration or break. Julia was not feeling well that day, plus the woman behind her constantly bumped into her, and as a result, she angrily yelled at the woman. Julia insulted the woman as cloddish and emphasized that the shirt she was wearing was an expensive brand name product, so the woman had better keep her distance. A man standing next to them had witnessed everything. He told Julia that most of the people on the bus were manual workers. He wanted to teach Julia a lesson for being disrespectful to others, but the woman immediately stopped him. To ease Julia's anger, the woman took out a small lipstick and gave it to Julia as an apology and a compensation for bumping into her and crumpling her shirt. The unexpected gift surprised Julia. Knowing it was just a minor accident, and she was partly responsible for it, she rejected the gift. However, the woman insisted on giving her the lipstick. The place where Julia worked was a shop that sold jewelry, clothes, bags, shoes for those who had interest in buying brand name products. Now, at the shop, there was a young woman who was interested in buying a new bag. Seeing the woman being hesitant, a female staff approached and enthusiastically advised her to pick the most suitable bag for her. From afar, Julia had heard all of the conversation between the two. Being confident about her sales skills, she suggested the woman should stay for a bit longer so she could counsel her more about another product. Since the first priority of the shop was customers, Julia was always friendly and supportive to anyone who needed counsel for buying the right product. She looked friendly at the female customer and told her that a beautiful, elegant woman like her needed a stylish brand name bag. Then Julia picked out a beautifully designed, extremely sophisticated bag and showed it to the customer. The sweet like honey compliments that Julia gave the woman made her eager to immediately buy the bag without any hesitation. But little did she know that the bag she had just bought was a counterfeit. Neither was it authentic nor a brand name product. Seeing two of her colleagues whispering something to each other, Julia yelled at them and told them to keep it a secret. Recently, Julia had swapped authentic bags with fake ones to earn the price difference. Her trick had been spotted, yet no one under management dared to expose. It was unknown why Julia was so in need of money that she dared to do such wrongful things. Suddenly, a gentle woman slowly walked into the shop. She was looking for a smart, elegant dress for her upcoming Fashion Week attendance. Not letting the woman wait any longer, Julia quickly brought out a jewelry set that was made of gemstones and diamonds, looking so sophisticated. The woman stared at the jewelry set for a while. It was unknown what she was thinking, yet she looked serious. Then suddenly she threw away the jewelry set to the ground. Couldn't hold in her anger, she howled and said that the jewelry was fake. The woman had a huge love for jewelry, so she could easily recognize if it was fake from the moment Julia showed it to her. Julia awkwardly explained to her that there were perhaps some mistake. The woman angrily shouted at Julia. She grabbed her by the collar and saying how she could be mistaken to point out the jewelry set was fake and demanded to see Julia's manager. Furious, the woman accidentally saw the clothing label on Julia's shirt and immediately found out that it was a counterfeit too. She couldn't believe a luxurious shop like this would sell counterfeits. She felt like she had been deceived and immediately pushed Julia to fall backward. Not foreseeing the incident, Julia fell to the ground, dropping her wallet and lipstick. Seeing Julia so pitiful, the woman sarcastically asked how could a person like her use fake items. Then she noticed the lipstick laying next to Julia on the ground. Holding the lipstick in her hand, she once again laughed at Julia since it was probably counterfeit too. Furious, she shouted at the staff, demanded to see the manager at all costs. The other two of Julia's colleagues had never encountered such a problem. They were confused, worried, and quickly assured the woman that the manager would be there soon. The branch manager finally showed up. While being on his way to the shop, someone had reported to him about the incident, so he had partly understood the situation. The manager quickly recognized the woman in front of him as she was a VIP customer of many fashion stores. She angrily accused Julia of wearing counterfeits and selling her fake jewelry. The brand manager immediately apologized to her and assured her that he would clear it up and not let the same thing happen again. As soon as Julia heard the manager, she was afraid that she would get fired. Julia confusingly talked to the manager and explained what had happened to him. The manager angrily took her hands off him and scolded her for being disrespectful to the customer. He went on, scolding Julia severely for her bad service in order to cool down the customer's anger. Her whole body heated up, and she couldn't think of anything else. Julia found herself in a tight corner. She would definitely lose her job for this. Right at that moment, she saw a lipstick on the floor. Then she suddenly remembered about the mysterious woman who had told her about the uses of it. When a person used this lipstick, anything they said, no matter if it was a lie, would automatically become the truth. But one thing to remember was that when the lie was valid, there was no way else to change it back. Out of curiosity, Julia decided to use it. The branch manager saw Julia picking up the lipstick, and being calm as if nothing had happened, he immediately demanded her to apologize to the woman. But Julia ignored him. She was still thinking about what the mysterious woman had told her was true or not. Without wasting any time, Julia immediately applied the lipstick. Her action amazed the manager and the customer. They were surprised by how apathetic Julia was. Having applied the lipstick, Julia slowly apologized to the woman, and to check the effectiveness of the lipstick, she started telling lies, saying that all the stuff that she had sold were authentic. As she was done with her explanation, the atmosphere was quiet as no one wanted to add anything else. At that moment, she felt extremely worried as she wasn't sure if the lipstick could help her. The atmosphere was unusually quiet. Both the manager and the customer confusingly looked at each other, while Julia was still worryingly waited. Suddenly, the manager apologized to Julia. His apology amazed her as she couldn't believe what she was hearing from him. The apologies and explanations from the manager made Julia extremely happy. The woman also apologized to her. She admitted that she was wrong about claiming Julia selling her counterfeits. Then she took out a stack of money and gave it to Julia as compensation for insulting Julia and breaking the diamond necklace. Julia, despite feeling happy inside, rejected the money from the woman. She didn't care much about money at that moment. What she truly cared about was that people would believe every lie that she told them. The manager saw her rejecting the money gently, told her to accept it as it would upset the customer if she didn't take it. Having no other choices left, Julia had to take the money of the customer. That made her come up with a great plan, a plan that would help her make a lot of money. Since that day, Julia had been appointed to do a big job title. She managed everything at the shop, even including sales consultancy. Every time when she had a customer, she was always cheerful and friendly to them. As a result, she had got a lot of customer love. She didn't hesitate to use the lipstick to convince her customers to buy her products. It didn't matter how basic and simple the products could be. Julia always told her customers that those were all authentic and brand name. She slowly drowned herself in the sea of lies. Thanks to the lipstick, the goods were sold easily and quickly. The profit that Julia got off the counterfeits she had sold was huge. Her purpose was to make a lot of money so she could change the life that she was leading. The situation at the shop seemed to be favorable for Julia, but with the employees, it was a big problem. However, Julia suddenly realized that with the help of the lipstick, she could even be promoted to the branch manager position. Not letting a chance slip by, Julia immediately applied for the branch manager position of the corporation. One of the days of the interview, Julia was really confident. Then, at that moment, Julia saw a branch manager walking out of the interview room. It seemed like she didn't do well. The manager candidate also saw Julia walking towards her. In terms of job titles hierarchy, Julia was well below compared to the female manager, but Julia didn't seem to care much about it as she ignored the manager. Her disrespectful behavior made the manager become uncomfortable. The female manager saw Julia walking into the interview room. She was confused at how Julia had been doing so well and always satisfied her managers. As Julia was walking quickly to the room, she accidentally dropped a piece of paper. The female manager curiously picked it up to see. As Julia got inside the room, she was excited to see the human resource manager. Moreover, she was neither worried nor scared. Instead, she was extremely confident. The manager took a look at her CV and asked her if she was too confident to apply for this position, since she was just an employee at that moment. With the help of the lipstick, she lied to the manager that she had spent years studying in England and working for big companies, so she had deep knowledge about brand name products. She was confident that she could do a good job as a brand manager. She assured the manager that if she was chosen for the job title, she would help the shop get to the top of the list of most reputable shops in the country. But the manager was doubtful about her ability, as she was too young. But Julia wasn't afraid. She was confident. With the fake diplomas and the lipstick, she tried to pour honey into the manager's ear so she could win his trust. The manager's doubts slowly disappeared. He now completely trusted her. Right that moment, the room's door was opened and the female branch manager held out in anger. Without hesitation, she exposed all the lies of Julia, saying that she was coming from a poor family that obviously had no financial support for her to study abroad. Julia immediately asked if the female manager had any evidence to prove that she was lying. The female manager didn't back down, as she couldn't accept a liar like Julia. She asked Julia if she had a sister who was being treated in a hospital and had to pay an extremely high treatment cost. Knowing that words only wouldn't be too convincing, she brought out her evidence to prove that she had just said. It was the medical bill receipt of Julia. Julia panicked to find out that the receipt was no longer in her bag. She angrily held at the female manager to justify her actions. She said that she didn't have a sister and had never paid for any treatment cost at a hospital. Her words surprised the female manager. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't think of anything to defend herself. Gradually, she started to believe that Julia was saying without having any doubt. She didn't even understand why she was having an argument with Julia on this matter. But Julia suddenly realized that she had just said. As she eventually knew it, it was all too late for her to take all the words that she said. No matter how inaccurate and dishonest a lie could be, with a lipstick, it would become a truth. Julia had said that she didn't have a sister, which meant that her sister would no longer exist. Julia cried loudly while running as fast as she could, praying that what she had said before wouldn't be true. She was regretting with all the lies that she had told. She had lied many times, and now she had to be the one that paid for them. Julia, feeling extremely scared, fearing that she would lose her beloved sister. If something bad had happened to her, she would no longer want to live. Because her sister was the only motivation that pushed her to strive for the better. The two had grown up without having parents, so her sister was the only one that gave her love and support. To Julia, the money that she had earned wasn't for her. She just wanted to save up all the money she had to pay for her sister's treatment costs. Julia finally made it to the hospital. Despite being really tired, she still tried to run as fast as she could to her sister's bed to see if her sister was affected by her lies. Julia immediately asked her sister if she was feeling okay. Fortunately, her sister was still there. She still existed and didn't disappear like what she was thinking. Seeing her sister was still being fine, Julia was less worried. She gently asked her if she was in need of anything. Seeing Julia being worried and tired, the young sister comforted her, saying that she was doing okay, despite having indescribable pains in her. Julia encouraged her sister to overcome her pain, as she was close to having enough money for the surgery. She was careful with her words, as she feared that she would tell a lie again. Seeing her sister being unbearable with the pain she was having, Julia immediately called the doctor to check on her. Not wanting to worry her sister, Julia assured her that the doctor would be there for her right away. However, opposite to her thoughts, the doctor was surprised to see her. He said, "Were you the one that called for doctors? Why were you doing that?" Seeing the neglectful attitude of the doctor, Julia was surprised. She immediately pointed at the bed and told him that her sister was suffering pain, so that was why she called him. But the doctor asked her, "Where are your sister? I don't see anyone on the bed." The doctor and the nurse were all surprised by her actions. They were confused about who Julia was talking about, since they didn't see anyone on the bed. The doctor worriedly looked at Julia and said, "Your sister is not here. I think you are being stressed out." What the doctor said to her made her laugh. She stared at him as if she didn't understand what he meant. She was sure that her sister was there with her. Furious, she carried her sister in her arms and got out of the hospital room. She made her way to the hospital reception and told the staff to check on her sister, as her sister was in pain and seemingly couldn't put up with it anymore. But the nurse didn't understand what Julia was talking about. The people around also curiously looked at her. They thought that she must have had mental illness to behave like that. Julia was devastated. She wondered to herself, how could no one see her sister? The young girl laid in Julia's arms, feeling painful yet still comforted by her sister, telling her to forget about her and move on, live a happy life, and free to do everything without being stressed about her. Julia's heart was shattered in pieces, yet she still tried to fight back tears as she didn't want to worry her sister. She admitted that it was her fault and felt guilty that she couldn't take care of her. Julia silently carried her sister in her arms to the waiting chairs. The two had no strength left to fight against a cruel world. Julia had now realized that there was nothing she could do to save her sister. Her heart was squeezed. She whispered to her sister that it was all because of her lies. She painfully cried out loud. Tears were constantly rolling down her face, and Julia deeply regretted for what she had done. Suddenly, she remembered what the mysterious woman had told her before leaving. A lie would be valid once it got told, yet could be replaced with another lie, and there was no way else for it to change back to the way it was. Julia immediately realized that there was still a chance to save her sister, and she had found the solution for her problem. If she could change her previous lies with another lie, everything could get back to the way it had been before. Without hesitation, Julia took out the lipstick and used it for one last time. Julia looked at her sister for the last time and said that she didn't have a sister because she wasn't Julia and she had never existed. Tears kept rolling down her face as she couldn't hold in the pain any longer. She painfully looked at her sister for the last time. What was inside her mind at that moment was her hope and prayers for her sister to awake. As if everything around the two sisters had stopped, Julia tightly hugged her sister for one last time. Then her body slowly faded away. Julia had no longer existed. People could only see one person left at the waiting chairs, and it was her younger sister. She was painfully laying on the chair. Seeing the girl's condition, the doctors immediately rushed her to the emergency room. Eventually, the surgery was successfully operated, but what the doctor said later surprised everyone. She was the only child in her family. Her parents were all dead, but her treatment costs were paid by an unidentified donor. Seeing her sister was cured, Julia couldn't hold back her tears of happiness. Her sacrifice had eventually paid off. The young girl raised her hand in the air. Julia waited for her sister to hold her hand one last time, but sadly the thing that her sister was reaching was a cup of water on the table. Holding the water cup in her hands, she felt a deep sorrow in her heart. Tears started to roll down. She couldn't help but wonder what she had forgotten, as she felt like she had missed something so important that she shouldn't have. In the future, As vaccines for the coronavirus had been created, another pandemic, which was caused by a virus under the name ghost mushroom, once again took over the world. Anyone who got infected with this virus developed more apparent symptoms compared to those of the coronavirus, as it included coughing, sneezing, paleness, a skinny, weak appearance, and fatigue. Moreover, those who were infected would see mushrooms growing out of their whole body. The mushroom with a variety of colors yet contained poison in them, slowly killing a human being eventually. The virus spread so fast that caused many hospitals to be overloaded. As a patient died from the virus, the mushrooms in them quickly disappeared as they turned into a blue smoke, floated in the air, and then spread to others as soon as possible. Having heard about the pandemic, many doctors and medical staff working in this hospital decided to take leave as a way of protecting themselves from the virus. Derek, a medical intern in the hospital, was one of them. Aside from spending time for his internship, he also had a side job as a food reviewer streamer. That day, Derek went to the hospital director's office to hand in his resignation letter. As the hospital was facing staff shortage, the director rejected his resignation. However, he was given a day off at home for getting some rest before going back to work. Derek's intention of a resignation had received many criticism from his co-workers, as they thought he was a coward who only cared about himself. Derek had a girlfriend named Alula. The two had been in a relationship for 7 years. However, the two had quarreled lots of times due to Derek's morbid jealousy. Lately, Derek noticed that Alula was seemingly very close to a young boy who just began his internship at the hospital. Failing to get his resignation approved, and witnessing his girlfriend happily talking to the young man at the lobby, Derek told Aluna not to get too close to him in fear of being infected with the virus. Hearing what Derek said to her, Aluna immediately felt angry as he had embarrassed her. She expressed her disappointment to Derek. Even the fact that Derek wanted to resign as he was in fear of catching the virus made her feel like he was indeed a coward. Aluna coldly told Derek that he was a selfish, self-interested person and she no longer wanted to see him. What Alula said to him cut him to the heart. He could ignore what others told him, but she was his only exception. Those words ached his heart so bad that he felt like someone was squeezing it. Then Derek left without saying anything. Derek left everything behind him as he walked out of the hospital gate and went home. Before going home, Derek visited a pharmacy with the intention of getting a box of medical masks, but the man was bewildered as soon as he went in there. As Derek was in bewilderment, thinking how he could buy himself some medical masks, then suddenly a strange man showed up, putting his hand on his shoulder and said, "I have a mask that could prevent all kinds of virus. Would you like to try it?" The strange thing was, the man in black gave Derek the mask without even taking a penny from him. Much to his surprise, the man quickly left. The only thing Derek remembered about him was that the man had a large red X sign on his chest. However, Derek still appreciated the act of kindness from the mysterious man. He was indeed a good person. As soon as Derek got home, he took out the mask and tried it out. Despite its pretty bizarre look, Derek found it extremely comfortable to wear on. Moreover, it also looked kinda cool to him. As a daily habit, Derek spent his time surfing the net as he ate a banana. But the strange thing was, despite not taking off the mask, the banana still lost a part of it. Moreover, it went straight to Derek's stomach. At that moment, the only thing he could feel was something slowly went down his throat, and a little bit of banana flavor still remained in his palate. Derek couldn't understand what was going on with him. Maybe this mask possessed some magical powers. Out of curiosity, Derek once again held the banana to his mouth. Strangely, despite not letting the banana touch his mouth yet, it immediately got cut off and quickly slipped into his throat. In just a moment, he had eaten a whole banana without having to take off his mask, or even using his facial muscles. Derek started to feel curious, as he wasn't sure if the banana was fully digested. As Derek found out how magical the mask was, he realized that he could eat as much as he wanted without fear of being full, and for that reason, he would quickly become more famous and earn more money thanks to his live stream. Without a bit of hesitation, Derek live streamed another video of him eating while putting the magical mask on, as he would use his thoughts to choose which food that he wanted to eat. Immediately, the number of viewers that watched his live stream had skyrocketed, as they were amazed by how Derek could eat lots of food without chewing. They even nicknamed him the King with the Big Belly. Derek was extremely excited as he gradually became more famous with his bottomless belly. He stood up and slammed the table, intended to buy more food, and started another live stream at once. However, Derek suddenly felt ill. He felt full. It seemed like the mask had indirectly digested the food that went to his stomach. Derek sensed that he had gained weight, but it didn't matter much to him since he had earned more money. It was better than going back to the hospital dealing with diseases and poverty. Meanwhile, the pandemic had become more serious as the number of people infected with the virus had increased dramatically. Many hospitals were overloaded while the shortage of modern equipment and medical staff were getting more severe. Those who were infected had to lay on the hospital hallways, while doctors and nurses spent many sleepless nights working tirelessly, yet unable to make the situation get any better. The hospital at which Derek used to work was not an exception either. Patients arrived in droves, yet most of them couldn't make it out alive. Seeing the dreadful scene appeared before his eyes, the hospital director couldn't help but worry. If the situation couldn't get any better, the number of people infected and died from this mushroom virus would keep increasing. Even hospitals would be in a helpless situation. Having no choices left, the director had urgently set up a meeting, asking every retired doctor and medical staff who resigned from their jobs to come back to the hospital. Alula was chosen to be one to send invitation letters to them. Of course, Derek was not an exception. As he was busy editing this video, he received a text from Alula. Although it was a little bit hurtful for Derek to receive a text from her, he knew that she still held a special place in his heart. Therefore, he agreed to come to the meeting, in the hope of rebuilding their broken relationship. That evening, a meeting was held with the attendance of all doctors and medical staff who used to work at the hospital. I hope all of you would stay. Together we will fight against this pandemic. It is certain that there will be lots of challenges and hardships ahead, but as long as we work together, we will win this battle. The powerful speech from the responsible hospital director quickly gained trusts from his co-workers. Spooky medical mask correction. Line 52. However, it didn't affect Derek's decision to resign from the job. Knowing that it was pretty selfish of him to do it, he believed it wasn't the time for him to make sacrifices for others. His most important priority now was to keep himself safe. But Alula was completely opposite of him, as she always cared for others. To her, the patient's health was always her top priority. As the meeting finished, Derek asked Alula to have a talk with him. Alula, please leave this hospital. If you stay, you will be infected with the virus. Derek also proudly told her about his new job, saying he could take care of her with the money he had. As long as Alula chose to leave the hospital, he would sacrifice everything for her. However, as Alula listened to the promises that Derek gave her, she didn't know what to do but looked down disappointedly. She didn't expect that Derek accepted to come to this meeting just to tell her such things. As a result, Alula rejected his offers, even broke up with him after a 7-year relationship with the man, as she was hugely disappointed. For Derek, he was thinking that Alula had something with the new trainee guy and therefore no longer loved him. Since that moment, he had held a grudge against her. After that day, Derek spent most of his time being at home and focusing on his streamer career. During the pandemic, what Derek did every day was to eat, go live stream and sleep. Life seemed to be comfortable for him, yet he couldn't stop thinking of Alula. Despite his hatred of her, one thing that couldn't be denied was that he still had lots of love for her. Contrary to his daily live stream that day, for some unknown reason, he had received a lot of angry reaction from his viewers, with some even left rude, offensive comments below the video. Derek was confused how his live stream this time got so many negative feedback. He took off the mask, closely looked at the screen to read what people were commenting on his video. As soon as he started reading the comments, Derek's face immediately changed color. The viewers were scolding him for being a selfish person as he left his job at the hospital. Seeing the hateful comments towards him, Derek just kept quiet as he knew from this moment he wouldn't be able to continue doing his job. But the bad thing was, some of the viewers even knew that Alula was his ex-girlfriend. Derek was shocked to see the comments about his girlfriend. They said that many doctors working at the hospital had been infected with the virus. Some were even in critical condition. In the record of doctors who had been infected with the virus listed the name of all of his co-workers. Alula was also one of them. She was one of the severe cases and was in a critical condition. Not only that, on many social network platforms, people were spreading a letter that was told to be Alula sent to Derek. In the letter, Alula wrote that she still loved him, and he was the only one that she was thinking of at that final moments of her life. Derek's heart shattered in pieces while he was reading the letter. It's safe to say that while everyone was turning their back on Derek, Alula was the only one who stayed by his side. She believed deep down he was a man of kindness. Tears rolled down his face as he read the letter. Guilt, regret, unbearable pain, and tremendous loss were all the emotions and feelings he had at that moment. Derek remained silent for a while. Then he looked straight at the camera and admitted his mistakes to his viewers. I was indeed a selfish person. What I need to do now is to work alongside the other doctors and fight back this pandemic. I sincerely apologize to you all. Derek immediately rushed to the hospital in the hopes of seeing Alula. The first person Derek met at the hospital was the handsome trainee guy, but he was no longer interested in thinking of anything else but his lover. Derek held at him, asking him to show the way to Alula's patient room. At first the man was a bit hesitant to do it, as Alula was in quarantine zone, but thinking that Derek was urgent to see her, he showed him the way, yet not forgetting to remind the man that he could only see her through frosted windows. Derek quickly rushed to the room where Alula was being treated. As the man was standing outside the quarantine room, he held out his girlfriend's name through the window. Alula quickly recognized the familiar voice. Alula turned around. At this moment, she was already in a critical condition as the poisonous mushrooms had appeared all over her body, even the face. Derek bursted into tears as he watched his girlfriend Alula. He put his hands on the window, choked with emotion. I'm so sorry. It was all my fault. I shouldn't have been so selfish and so wrong of you. Please don't leave. Stay with me, darling. But Alula didn't want Derek to see her face as she quickly looked away. She was afraid that he would see her being ugly, and more than that, she had realized that she no longer had time being by his side. But no matter how many times Derek was begging to see her face, Alula still didn't want to turn around. To her, it was the best way for him to leave her without being so hurt. Of course, after being together for 7 years, Derek knew Alula better than anyone. He wiped out his tears and said that he would help her and the others recover from this virus. It looked like Derek had come up with an idea. Derek quickly left, leaving Alula with a bad hunch. She started to feel worried as she thought he would do something reckless. Derek found himself a speaker and then told every doctor, nurse and patient to gather at the hospital lobby. Everyone was bewildered, not knowing what Derek was up to. All the patients at the hospital, please gather at the lobby. I can help you recover from this virus. Please, trust me. After discussion, the doctors agreed to allow the patients to go outside, yet having to put their masks on and do what Derek told them to. Alula was being walked into the lobby with the help of a chief physician. People quickly gathered at the lobby, feeling uncertain and confused. Derek suddenly put on the magical mask. He whispered in his mind that he wanted to eat all of these mushroom viruses. The mask immediately worked as the virus were sucked into the mask that Derek was wearing. Derek wanted to prove that he was not a coward. The smoke that contained the deadly virus quickly got sucked up. Miraculously, everyone had become healthy again, and the scary virus was no longer existing. But that moment, Alula couldn't believe her eyes. Derek had completely disappeared. Instead, there was a huge mountain covered with poisonous mushrooms. Derek had sacrificed his life for the others. Thanks to him, the pandemic was under control. And since that day, Derek was remembered as a hero who saved humanity from the virus. This is a story about a man named Johnson who works as a construction worker. The man has a habit of making comments on Facebook posts, most of which were offensive, mocking and full of lies. Recently, Kalim had become the object of ridicule from Johnson. Kalim was his childhood friend back when they lived in the same neighborhood. However, Johnson didn't like him at all. Even when the two had grown up, Johnson was still bitterly jealous of Kalim as the man became famous and successful. Kalim was a journalist. He usually wrote articles exposing thieves on the streets. He quickly became famous thanks to his noble and virtuous actions. In a fit of jealousy, Johnson created a fake account and left many hateful comments on Kalim's posts, yet he quickly got criticized by the netizens. As people blasted him for his comments, Johnson continued to comment on more posts. For Johnson, social networks were the only place that he could freely express his thoughts without being held responsible for them, since no one knew who he was. Johnson was so addicted to social networks that he once left his working area just to have time making comments on someone's posts, and ended up being caught by his superiors. But the man didn't learn his lesson as he dared to ask his manager for a bonus break time of 2 minutes, as he was in the middle of an argument with the netizens. The unreasonable request from Johnson irritated the manager. His face became darkened. Feeling extremely furious, the manager hit Johnson by the back of his head. The strong hit made Johnson drop his phone on the ground, causing its screen to crack. Because of his lack of responsibility at work, Johnson was fired from the job. As Johnson looked at the broken phone on the ground, he became livid, but there was nothing he could do now. He took off his uniforms and left with a discontented expression on his face. Johnson didn't utter a single word on his way home. He looked down, feeling uncomfortable in his body. But Johnson quickly discovered something on his way home. An object that would change his life permanently. It was a smartphone with a creepy looking phone case that looked like a moth. Johnson's eyes dilated as he saw the phone. He picked it up and instantly acted like it was his. He let out a smile, thinking it was a gift that God sent him out of sympathy with his current situation. As the phone wasn't locked, Johnson easily gained access to it. And the first thing he did was to log on to his social networks accounts and search the name Kalim. Kalim had just posted a picture on his page warning people about thieves stealing on a bus. Of course, Johnson immediately left negative comments on the post and got attacked by the netizens again. Seeing everyone bashing him, he frowned, determined to fight back at those opposing him. The man didn't even bother to go home as he was still standing at the spot where he found the phone. Typing angry comments, he described Kalim as a liar who fed people lies and gained fame from it. But strangely, as Johnson was focusing on the phone, a puff of smoke suddenly emitted and surrounded him, then billowed to other nearby phones. It was until a man walked past him and yelled in panic that Johnson took his eyes off the phone. After the green smoke surrounded the man's phone, something bizarre which looked similar to a root appeared. It started moving. And from the root came out many creepy things that looked like human mouths. They were crimson and drooling with saliva. The mouths repeatedly spoke to the comments that were made by Johnson, which made the man extremely scared and unable to stand still. Johnson told everyone to follow him on his account. As if the man was being hypnotized, he went to Johnson's profile and clicked follow him. No sooner had the man completed what he was told to do when the mouth stopped saying. This spooky smartphone had the ability to get anyone hypnotized by its owner, Johnson. Everything soon returned to normal. The roots that came out of the phone quickly disappeared. Only the thoughts of that man remained changed. Johnson gradually learned about the magical use of the spooky phone. He found it pleased and delighted to possess it. Since that day, Johnson had used the phone to make everyone support him. And for that reason, Kaleem had gotten himself into trouble caused by the netizens, as they had been hypnotized by Johnson and believed Kaleem was an evil person who disguised himself as a hero. Kaleem couldn't hide the sadness on his face as he read the negative comments on his posts. He then made a post on his page telling his followers that he would make the bus thief get caught in 3 days. The post quickly gained positive reactions. But that couldn't stop Kaleem from worrying, as he knew it wasn't easy to catch the thief. Johnson was delighted to see his old friend being in dire straits. Of course, he wouldn't forget to leave hateful comments on the post. The magical mobile phone had made it easier for Johnson to cyberbully anyone he disliked. One day, after having lunch, Johnson took a bus home. The bus was crowded. There was no seat left and people had to stand, but Johnson was willing enough to get a seat for him, then continued to check his newsfeed. Unexpectedly, the thief who Kaleem had been searching for the whole week was there on the bus. Taking advantage of the bus being crowded, he aimed for a girl who was carrying an expensive handbag. But before he could steal the handbag, he was startled by an unexpectedly loud scream. It looked like someone had caught him red-handed. It was Kaleem who spotted the thief's wrongdoing. Johnson didn't expect to see both the thief and his old friend on the same bus. In less than a day, Kaleem had fulfilled his promise of catching the criminal, as the man was finally arrested. But Johnson noticed something bizarre about this particular man who was facing his back at the bus windows. He tried to avoid eye contact with Kaleem and looked very suspicious. After Johnson got off the bus, he received a notification about Kaleem's new post. It turned out that Kaleem had just made an announcement to his followers that the thief had been arrested. Needless to say, the post was greeted with acclamation from the netizens. Johnson was furious to see that. Right that moment, he encountered a man dressed in black who looked similar to that thief. He suddenly came up with an idea. One could easily tell that it was an evil idea just by seeing the smirk on his face. Johnson approached the man in black and asked if he was the thief's accomplice. But before the man could reply to his question, Johnson quickly said that he could help his friend get away with the crime. At first, the man was confused and hesitant with the offer, but he was curious about Johnson. In order to make it sound more convincing to the man, Johnson took him to a nearby internet cafe where there were many people currently using its service. Turned out that his plan was to use the magical phone to manipulate the thoughts of those who were present. He made up a story of the thief having to take care of his sick mother and had no other choice but to steal it, as it would help him get enough money for his mom to have an operation. As soon as the false story was posted, all of the computers at the internet cafe instantly grew roots. The place quickly turned into chaos as people screamed terrifyingly. From the roots appeared creepy-looking mouths that they constantly repeated what the post said and hypnotized everyone there. Johnson didn't have to do anything afterwards, as he just waited for the netizens to share his post. The powerful smartphone had allowed the criminal to be freed from jail as the man was released on bail. Not only that, Kaleem was under attack from his followers due to his inappropriate way of handling the case. Johnson felt satisfied as he finally won over Kalim. He and the other two thieves had become accomplices ever since and committed crimes together. Thanks to the help of Johnson, the criminals now became more dangerous. They weren't scared when someone caught them in the act of stealing. Instead, they remained chillingly calm. As the girl let out a fierce scream, many people had blocked the thief's way and demanded him to return the wallet to her. But the thief didn't give in as he pulled out a sharp knife and threatened the ones that stopped him from escaping. But strangely, the group of men soon let the criminal go. There was even a sympathetic look on their faces. The phone's magical power was nothing to be underestimated. It had manipulated people's thoughts and made them behave improperly. As the thieves continued to expand their territory, Johnson spent his time with the phone, helping them and getting paid for each of their missions. He used the spooky phone to spread false information and control people's thoughts and earn money for it. Kalim was once a highly respected figure, now becoming someone who was deeply hated by the online community. Kalim couldn't understand why everyone suddenly acted foolishly as they were protective of the criminals. It made him think a lot, especially when people severely criticized him for everything he did. But he couldn't just stay silent and watch the thieves rage on. As Kalim was thinking, all of a sudden he acted surprised. It turned out that before his eyes now was the thief and the guy seemingly intended to commit his wrongdoing. As the thief knew everyone was on his side now, he confidently stood in front of Kalim, even putting on an arrogant smirk on his face. Of course, Kalim wouldn't let him easily get away. He followed the thief and watched every single move of him. The two criminals quickly carried out their plan after identifying their targets, but little did they know that Kalim had taken pictures of them. Unfortunately, the camera sound had caught the attention of the thieves. They went to Kalim's direction. Kalim still remained calm despite being in a dangerous situation. He had evidence to expose the criminals. Unexpectedly, one of the thieves pulled out his knife and rushed to Kalim. A stabbing sound was heard. Kalim was stabbed in his stomach. He lost his balance and fell to the ground. The thief and his accomplices quickly ran away. As news about the passing of Kalim was all over the media, the netizens gradually realized how wrong they were to defend the criminals. The thieves once again made contact with Johnson, asking for help. Johnson's face changed color as soon as he learned about the death of his old friend, but agreed to help them anyway as he was promised to be paid a huge amount of money. Despite not being directly involved with the murder, Johnson had been exposed by some people as one of the thieves' accomplices, but that didn't scare Johnson much as he still had the magical phone with him and could easily change people's minds to his wish. He once again used the phone to put another post on his profile page. This time, it was made to issue a threat. Johnson said the thieves would be ready to kill anyone who opposed him. The threatening content together with the disgusting mouths made people even more scared. Some were hypnotized and scared to death. Just like that, Johnson and the criminals had become longtime partners. His job was to help them get away with their crimes and be paid for it. One day, the thieves asked Johnson to meet them, saying it was urgent. It was unknown what their purpose was, but the rendezvous was a deserted alley. As soon as Johnson saw them, he asked about the money as he hadn't received a penny from them for the whole month. But their behavior was really strange. They asked Johnson, "What money?" Right that moment, Johnson sensed something terrible was about to happen, but it was too late. The thieves put on an evil smile as if they had been hypnotized. Johnson's face instantly changed color. It turned out that with the help of Johnson, the thieves had become more dangerous and soon took over the city, which had already turned into a mess as corruption was widespread and loots taking place everywhere. The thieves were no longer a group of two as they had formed a gang and grew stronger. Now they didn't need Johnson anymore. Johnson knew he was in danger. He turned around and intended to run away. But it was too late for him to do that as one of the thieves rushed to Johnson and stabbed him in the stomach. The incident happened way out of his expectation. Johnson now realized it was him who let the evil took over and raged on, yet had to die by the hands of the bad guys. It's scary how crowd effect could grossly distort the truth, and social media sites are the double bevel knives that worsen the problem.